beloved friends, if I may, I would like to speak plainly today. Not about triumph without scars, but about resurrection with scars. The church, our church, St. Andrew's, carries wounds. And maybe you, like me, carry some too. We just heard the gospel today that brings us into a room still heavy with fear, where the disciples have locked themselves away. Jesus appears not sparkling and unblemished, but wounded. It is in his wounds that Thomas demands to see and to touch, not because he is faithless, but because he is hungry for a faith that is real. Thomas shows us that resurrection is not about erasing the pain. It is about living, loving, and healing through it. So this last week, we had Pray Think Act, which is our weekly bi-weekly informal Eucharist that we have downstairs. And it is a generational worship that the children often lead and will allow adults to participate as well. And they heard this story this week. And they were asked to name their own fears and hardships. And the children were not shy in their vulnerability. They're not even shy to come up here and be with the one that they love the most. Tessa. But they have this gift of sharing openly and vulnerably. And it is a gift that not many adults in the room had. Because while they were sharing, a lot of us were hesitant to share our stories. But it was one brave adult voice that named a wound that is still tender among many of us, and the wound of COVID-19. Isolation was very difficult for each of us in this room. And when the church began to open in 2021, we decided to move from the parking lot back inside. And this was not an easy decision to make. Not only did we just reopen the doors, but we reopened wounds as well. There were so many comments coming at so many different ways. I know, it was a lot, Tanner. Why aren't we opening up faster? Why do I still have to wear a mask? I can't worship online. I need to be here in person. I cannot be here in person. My health will not allow it. Why don't my friends hear my cries and visit me? My body cannot survive a gathering with unmasked individuals. I can say that during this time, no one felt fully seen. Many triangulated, and the longer isolation dragged on, the deeper the wounds became. Many of us lost friends and family members. We grieved during the pandemic, often alone, and sometimes we were just not kind to each other. Perhaps some of you still bear the tender scars of being left behind. And if you listen today and don't recall these pains, maybe your healing begins with noticing the grief around you, the grief you may have had to push aside in order to survive yourself. As the earth continues with her fever, it is likely that several of us will experience a global pandemic again. Richard Rohr says, "The risen Christ is always wounded. It is not a flaw, but a feature." And he also reminds us that we cannot heal what we do not first acknowledge. Friends, if we want resurrection, not the cheap, shiny kind, but the real, costly kind, we must name our wounds, and we must see each other's scars. And yes, we must touch them gently and tenderly with love. You know, resurrection has happened when we show up with our pain. Resurrection happens when a broken community chooses to heal and not to hide, when an old bitterness becomes peace, or when a church wounded confesses its failures and rises humbler and more faithful. Resurrection isn't something that just happened one time. It's something that happens over and over again whenever grace rises where only death seems possible. The risen Jesus still carries his wounds. So will we. But in the presence of Christ, our wounds can become sacred. They can become the doorway to healing for ourselves and for each other. Thomas needed to see and touch the real wounds, and so do we. Today, maybe some of you are still aching for healing. Maybe some of you are afraid. Jesus does not scold Thomas for needing proof. He meets Thomas exactly where he is, and he invites him to touch love through the scars. Beloved, Jesus meets us exactly where we are too, in our fear, in our weariness, and in our longing for a church that is whole. He says, not once, but twice, "Peace be with you." Here, touch my wounds and live.